My name is Nicholson, and I've been a practicing artist, I guess, since 2010. I currently live in Penticton, and I'm part of the show here, which we're in my sort of installation of it right now, which is called Her Land, Perspectives in Eco Art. And I'm also doing my PhD at UBC Okanagan, so I'm just finishing that off this year. So this work is not directly part of it, but definitely intertwined with that. Most of my work is photographic, installation based. This honestly is an amazing show to be part of. Like I was saying, there's 9 female artists in this exhibition, and all of their work, I think, deeply engages with notions of landscape and the land and how we use it and how we could perhaps be using it in better ways. I think a lot of the artists, myself included, are looking at climate collapse, and my work for, I guess, the last 10 years has been based in the Arctic, and I've been photographing climate research, specifically, I think, looking at extinction and stuff around permafrost, spaces, permafrost research. So I kind of like to call them that I'm documenting kind of these rock star scientists that are working in different parts of the high Arctic. And when I first started photographing in the Arctic, I wanted, I guess, some kind of access way or some kind of point of entrance, perhaps beyond looking at icebergs or landscapes or just these, picture perfect places that I was seeing. So I started applying to go to science stations and to document these science, working in the field and in archives, and slowly I've been able to do that. It's very expensive to go to the Arctic. I've been very fortunate to have some grants and some support to go. So I've been places like Russia before the pandemic, before the Ukraine war. I've been to places like, different parts of Russia, different parts of Greenland, and then different parts in Canadian Arctic. Very fortunate to visit different aspects of the Arctic and to photograph the landscape there. So this exhibition in particular kind of looks at the rising value of frozen landscapes, or just that notion of what something, the value of, I guess, a frozen space or a frozen landscape is, and I guess to kind of put it in a nutshell, how that might even be rising, sort of within our, the rising value of that on our sort of warming planet. So I've been looking at permafrost archives and cores and photographing different just frozen archives in general. Some of these images here, like that are smaller, this is kind of interesting because the first time I've built a space like this, so it's supposed to mimic either a freezer or a cave, and you'll see when you enter there's these kind of like plastic, pretty classic freezer door to a sort of walk-in freezer in a restaurant or something. And then there's all of these smaller images or details of different permafrost archives, some from Norway, Russia, different parts. Some people are really familiar with the Svalbard seed bank, which is this whole archive underground of seeds. If there was something very horrific to go wrong, that these seeds can be accessed, and they've actually already been accessed for a lot of projects. And then just other permafrost core banks, scientific based banks. So I don't know, looking at this idea that perhaps that I think in the past the frozen is thought of even as a desert or empty or something that's very unvaluable and just almost overlooked, I think, in terms of its value. And these spaces, I think, are becoming more and more rare if you look at permafrost landscapes and how they're changing and how they're being impacted, the landscapes. For myself, like photographing this, it's very documentary, my work, and I'm documenting science and their work and their research, but I'm not a journalist. I'm not, publishing a scientific paper. I'm obviously also not a scientist myself. I'm coming in there with large-scale format cameras, film cameras. I'm obviously then presenting them, and not only in an art gallery, but sometimes, it's these images here, like blowing them up very large. Sometimes they'll be the basis for an installation and other things. So I'm really, I think at least, presenting that work, that scientific work, this work on the environment and landscapes in a very different context, and hopefully for a different audience as well. And I think that's important. I think when I first started photographing at science stations, I was very afraid to even kind of identify myself like, I'm an artist, I'm here. Like I would say like, oh, I'm just going to document your work, almost like I was a journalist. And now I think I'm really interested in talking about that, this idea of creative research and what it means to make work, if it is documentary based, or what that looks like in terms of the art making process. And honestly, I think I had a lot of misconceptions, of course, about what science was and how that was actually really similar to my own process as an artist. And I think myself included saw science as being like very linear. You know, you start out with this idea, you complete it, and to be honest, similar to art, there's a lot of dead ends, there's a lot of failure, there's a lot of things that go wrong. And I really saw that like connected in this way to when I was there as an artist, being able to document what a lot of these scientists were doing or even trying to figure out. And especially in the Arctic, like a lot of the research, unfortunately, it's still this very baseline research. They're still trying to figure things out. Things are changing so quickly. There's so many other things going on, like some that you're mentioning, like land rights, Indigenous ownership of archives, of different things that are being found within these landscapes. I've been working with a lot of paleontologists, you know, pulling out fossils and bones. So a lot of ownership issues around even these spaces and who should be there, like who should be researching. And so I think my work like puts that in a different context. And I think that can be an interesting conversation. So. Yeah, so as I was mentioning, like there's these photos here, which are basically all permafrost archive, kind of frozen archive photos. And then there's been this sort of rough kind of outline of a freezer around it. But I guess if you're in the freezer, just to the left or the opposite way, there's two photographs of mine that were shot in Russia at the Northeast Science Station. And one is just of the overall of the station, which is kind of cool. It used to be this old sort of satellite radio station. So I think it gives a vibe of the station. And then there's also a younger female scientist, and it almost looks like she's giving the earth like an IV or an injection, and she's actually looking at permafrost levels. And I was always really drawn to that image because it was like, you know, what's going on here? What is she doing? And it looks very intimate, almost this act of care, that the scientific test that she's doing. So those are two of my images, which are very similar to most of my work that I've been doing, of pretty much like more straight documentary, straight on images of scientists within the landscape, which I think do connect with these. Maybe just the last thing I'll say is that until March 21st, there's a show of my work also at the Alternator, Artist Run Center in Kelowna here. So yeah, if you have time to experience that as well, and it connects really well to this work. There's this massive installation I did of ceramic tusks, which kind of connect to this with archives and other images of scientists and paleontologists in the Arctic.